We are live with Pat Dixon. I don't really have a good intro to the show, but as far as I always want singing to happen in some way, so let's do
Woke Week, Woke Week.
Wow.
Woke Week. I mean, this is really just a live broadcast with Pat Dixon, but the name of the show is Woke Week. It's not a woke show. It's not weekly, but I just came up with that title because it has a certain ring to it. Pat Dixon, thanks for joining us on whatever you call this, if it's a show or not.
Oh, it's definitely a show. Thanks, Tom, for having me. A pleasure to be here. On Woke Week.
I'm seeing there's a couple of issues here. One is that you have a green screen. It doesn't appear to be well lit. It's also slightly off kilter.
I could use some of the booze that you have in your babackground, I think. That would be better.
I know. It was funny because I tuned into the Cumia network on election night, and everyone was having a good time and everything, but they were remarking on the fact that I got the booze and the games, so we've got like checkers and Monopoly and Clue, all the classic board games next to all of the classic alcohols. So they seem to think I was leading a charmed life.
What fun is Mousetrap without tequila, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, why did I want to talk to you? Because, this is good. I should have said, light them if you got them, and I didn't even say it, and there you went ahead. Took my cue.
Took a chance.
Yeah. I think I saw maybe a post on one of the formats like Twitter, and it was you saying something about freedom or people willingly giving up their freedom. So I said, Why don't we have Pat? Oh, good. That makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Why didn't I turn that on?
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about freedom, but let's start first with, I don't know if people know, you're the host of NYC Crime Report on the Cumia network. And so I thought maybe we'd do a little roundup on crime, because my assumption is that crime is up in the city for a number of reasons. I can't decide if it is up in the city. Am I correct?
It is. It is way up. And it's not easy. It's way up. It's not easy reporting crime in New York City either, Tom, because I don't like heights. You know?
Yes.
I don't like Crown Heights, Washington Heights, University Heights. But homicides are up year to date. Let's go through the years. 2018, 265 homicides. 2019, 292. Just a few more. Currently, there's 400.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot more, and that doesn't happen for no reason. Yeah.
So what would you say? I'm assuming that there is a couple of reasons for it. Obviously, there's a different approach to crime in the city with de Blasio than there was with previous mayors. From what I understand, de Blasio's crime was going up before COVID and before the big rioting that happened after what was the one, the
George Floyd overdose.
Okay. Yeah. So the George Floyd thing, that caused a lot of crime in American cities. COVID, because businesses are shut down and essentially, people can bust through plywood easy enough. It seems like that would be another contributing factor. But it was up in New York just because of, I think, de Blasio's, policing philosophy. But what would you say with a doubling of the murder rate? What are the factors? If you had to ballpark it, would you say 50-50, 50% COVID policy, 50%, the anti-police movement? What would you say it is?
It's very hard to tell exact percentages. It's not quite doubled on homicides yet. We're currently at 400. We may double. I don't think the year-end total last year, just to be fair, was 319. And we're currently having surpassed that by about 100, I suppose.
Tis the season, so between a lot can happen between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
It's true. I think statewide it's a problem because Governor Cuomo and the state legislature, they passed this bail reform. Right, bail reform is something that allows criminals to be immediately released for almost any crime. Like crimes that you would never imagine would you be able to get out without bail. So when you have a revolving door, police doing their job, they arrest a guy for, say, I believe child porn. If you make child porn, That's not considered a violent enough crime. And there's several more that are just like shockingly. I mean, I think DUI is one, maybe even vehicular homicide. There's a very
Well, I would
short...
assume I would assume it's the bad ones, because the crimes that aren't so bad, they don't even have bail to begin with. If I'm right, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and really, they don't even have a criminal element to them anymore, and that's where you talk about De Blasio getting this policy going much earlier, and making it a desk appearance ticket to urinate on the streets, to jump the turnstile, and to drink, have an open container, things like that. So really, he's been working on legalizing the small stuff in order to, try to equalize, theoretically, the racial distribution, because he believed that those crimes were being enforced unfairly along racial lines. Now, but to get back to this year with COVID, I mean, it's created sitting ducks, of all these businesses, and they're not open, and in fact they were just reopening at the time that the Floyd protests began, worldwide. So as it turned out, these businesses who had been out of business for so long were trying to just get back and make anything they can and make ends meet, and then bam, here they are, now they're looted. It's truly like one kick in the groin after another, for the business owners, and as we can see too in the number of arrests, felony arrests are down 24, almost 25%. Misdemeanor arrests are down by almost 45%. So citywide, we're talking about fewer than 60. We're talking about 68,543 fewer arrests than there were the previous year. So people are not getting arrested as much for the crimes. What's the point? And one final thing, our city council passed some laws that are designed to prevent police brutality, and cutting off the windpipe and stuff. So they have these laws now that are pretty draconian on the police. They can be charged criminally if they put pressure on someone's chest, around the torso at all. A lot of the very basic things that police officers learned are now not available to them as tactics. So if somebody doesn't want to go to jail, they're resisting, basically they go away, and they've removed, any way of stopping them short of shooting them, and police are willing to shoot them over these things. So, it's difficult to negotiate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would think if you're trying to take a subject into custody, the chest is going to be one of the safest places to be putting your energy. We have a cage around it. It's also, it's the body. So you hold it. If you ever try to see someone struggling, if they try to hold on to someone's arm or leg, someone can just kick their way out. It's dangerous for the perpetrator and the cop. I would think you want these police officers to have their own people decide which in their training, which is going to be the safest for them, and obviously for the people that they're trying to take into custody. They don't want them to be hurt or themselves to be hurt.
No, you're absolutely
and if you talk to any
right.
cops, do you ever have cops on your show and talking about the training? Because whenever I talk to cops, I say, let me talk about the training. They go through. It's the classic police officers, police precincts are just like any company that you work for. The amount of sensitivity training and all this other, I mean, it's no different in police officers. It's not like Hill Street Blues. They get, hey, buddy, hey, go crack some heads. They don't do that. They have social workers, and I mean, it's a very politically correct environment in the upper echelons of America's urban police departments.
Certainly is, and it's gotten even more political. Police commissioners serve at the pleasure of the mayors, and the mayors in a lot of these big cities are obviously Democrats, and they are bent on reforming the police, as is the most I guess the loudest people in the community are out there marching and looting for it. So you have the situation where it all rolls downhill and becomes completely strange. Like you said, you have monitors, you have all these people who are not involved with law enforcement trying to make these decisions, and they make the most, they make the decision that they think is going to sound the best to, their constituents back in Brooklyn or something, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing that gets the job done the safest and the best. I do have police officers on the show all the time. Pete Paduccio is a retired detective. He was 40 years on NYPD, just retired this past year, looked around him, saw what was going on, said, I think it's time for me to go. And I was fortunate enough to get him. He's a night watch detective. He's forgotten more than I'll ever see. And, there was a guy who he did the shooting that instigated the Washington Heights riots back in the 90s. And I've had him on. Chris Strom is a guest tonight from Brooklyn to Baghdad. That's his book. He's a police interrogator who went on to question people. And I do the same thing, Tom. I want to know, tell me about what it's like now. Ralph Friedman is another cop that I had on. He was a detective back in the 70s and 80s and helped clean up the city. And I asked him, how do you think you'd fare as a cop now? He said, I wouldn't last 10 minutes.
Right. Well, I just got a notice on, because I follow all these guys on Twitter. I have my COVID list. People like Alex Berenson. I don't know if you follow him.
I will.
He's a big COVID realist. I'll send you my COVID list. I have about 25 or 30 people that I follow, and I put it in a Twitter list so I can get my COVID updates. And
may I ask you, do you have Tom Woods?
Woods is on there. Yes. He's one
great.
of the, he's one of the newer guys, I think. Somehow I followed him through somebody else. But this was on Berenson's site. Somebody sent him a Gmail. It's somebody who works for the city. Alex, just wanted to give you a tip. The city is laying the groundwork for a shutdown December 1st. This isn't the schools. This is a city shutdown. I have a direct source that's been tipped off numerous times in advance. If a pushback starts now, maybe there's some hope. That was his last editorial thing. Maybe people should push back. Europe is having, I don't know if you saw in Germany, they had the fire hoses on people in Germany protesting the lockdowns. Some other places you've seen protests in England, some in Ireland. But we haven't had serious lockdown protests in the United States. I always had the impression that we were a freedom-loving nation, and I would expect we would be the first ones to push back on restrictions. I mean, not just restrictions on liberty. I mean, it's unbelievable. What's going on in the United States and in Europe is basically China. I mean, it's what we copied China's response to the pandemic. The fact that none of it's worked, forget all that. Let's assume it's doing something, because I don't believe, I believe not only has it not done anything to slow down COVID, it's made it much worse. But let's just say that maybe there was some good to it. It's still unacceptable at the level of the freedom shutdown. So when I don't even know what I saw your tweet yesterday, but it was something about people willingly giving up their freedom. Are you surprised, like I am, that Americans are, and some of them aren't, obviously, but more than half of the country seems okay with communist level destructions of their liberty?
I'm not surprised, because they vote for it. I mean, that's what they want. The left, or, let's just say half the country, or, however you wish, but they love the virus. They don't just not care. They love the virus because it does so many things for them. It spites the people that they politically don't like. It gives them a very definite framework. These are people who a lot of times are not opening their own business, running their own business. They're not living a dream. They're not using their freedom in the same way that a lot of us do. So therefore, to them, hey, they get to stay home. For instance, the teachers' unions, as the schools shut down, they'll continue to get paid. The teachers will. They just won't be there, risking their lives. They also like to have mask shaming, so that they can turn that against people, and they can point out who's right and who's wrong. And that's a huge thing to them. They vaguely like to be victims. And so, when they can be sick and all this sickness is around, and they respond a lot to fear. They respond more to fear than they do to freedom. And it's the opposite for the other half of the country. However, the media, being in control of the narrative and being in cahoots more or ideologically aligned with the fear crowd, well, they're the ones pumping the fear anyway. So they want to pump the fear while the other side wants to pump the brakes on all this stuff. You know, when they protested in Michigan, you know, at the state house or whatever, you know, when they showed up,
that was early on, right? Kind of early.
That was early on, yeah. And they were called white supremacists. They were, you know, and nobody wants to be called that just because you like your freedom. You know, they were labeled a bunch of, you know, gun-toting extremists. They weren't. They just wanted their rights. And so I think there was something demoralizing that happened when we had that letter of 1,200, you know, signed by 1,200 doctors who all work for Dr. Fauci, by the way. Mm-hmm. Virtually all of them are in his employ there at the center where he is, saying that, you know, BLM protests are okay, lockdown protests are not. I mean, here locally, de Blasio said, you know what, it's against the law to protest the lockdown. Now, he doesn't have any right to do that. That should make people come out even more. But the effect it has is to isolate that point of view, make it seem, you know, illegal, make it seem racist, make it seem, and, you know, people get beaten down. It's not an equal playing field.
Yeah, well, I don't even know the status on, because so we had those protests, a couple of protests in the Midwest, right? What did you say? It was Minnesota?
It was Michigan.
Okay, and it was in Michigan. Yeah, because what's her name there is so she's done a whole new round of shutdown stuff. Some people are trying to impeach her. That's probably not going to go anywhere. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe it will. But I haven't seen any other protests like those ones in Michigan. Do you think they're coming? Because they like I said, I just saw hoses in Germany. They were hosing down Germans who were out in the streets, and I was thinking, this needs to happen in the United States. Now, I'm not out there leading them, so maybe somebody should say, like, Shalou, you know, put your money where your mouth is. The thing is, I was fairly encouraged at the beginning of all this when I saw the videos of the people throwing tantrums in Whole Foods or in Home Depot, you know, and then they would try to shame them, the mass Karens or whatever. But I was always encouraged, even though I don't do that myself because I don't like to have public spectacles. I generally was hoping that other people would do it. But it seems people have acquiesced. I was in Manhattan recently, and I try to avoid it when I can because it's like zombie land in there, at least out here in the suburbs. I'm up in Bronxville, so I can walk around my neighborhood, and I don't have a mask on, and I'm trying to live my life normally, or else I exercise. I go running, you know, without a mask on. Maybe I run through town. I ride my bike, you know, so you can live a kind of a normal life. But I was walking around the Upper East Side of Manhattan the other day without a mask on because I don't wear a mask outside because it's very stupid to do that because you're outside, you know. Yeah. But everyone had a mask on and people were yelling at me. I said, I'm not going to put a mask on. I'm outdoors and it's a breezy day and the zombies were walking around. And it's just, you know, what happened to these people, Pat?
Well, it's discouraging. You know, what happened to them is look, you know that Manhattan is like of a certain stripe politically. They are in full agreement with this. These are the people who, for the reason you just described, love the virus. They would be happy if it never went away. They protect it. They, you know, any sort of drug that comes out when Trump is hopeful about hydroxychloroquine. No, he's crazy. He wants to shoot bleach into your vein and all that stuff. He's, you know, they hate solutions. They don't want them. You know, the schools are shutting down here now again. The parents are upset. There's going to be another full-scale lockdown. The numbers don't bear this out. Right now,
did you see the Times today? Nicholas Kristof, you know him. He's well-known lefty. Nicholas Kristof wrote an article in the Times today called "Trump Was Right," and he, you know, because he has data, and he's obviously he's a real leftist, and he's always screaming about Republicans are evil and Trump is bad. But he said the schools thing, it's child abuse, what they're doing to when shutting down these schools. The most vulnerable students are the ones getting hurt because they don't have access to great Mac computers like all the rich people do. And so, you know, he took a leftist perspective, but he actually, I was surprised. Instead of just saying, like a lot of these people at the New York Times do, he actually came out and he said, Trump was right. I'm sure people are going to scream at him for it. But I'm wondering if you see that happening across the board now that, you know, the election's over. Do you think that they're going to slowly start putting their toe in the water and saying like, maybe these shutdowns were excessive? I thought it would happen the day after the election, but it's almost getting worse. And if this is right, they're going to do shutdowns again on December 1st.
Yeah, well, we always want to be looking forward to a date where we can think things might start to get better, and it's been, we've had various dates, throughout, and then it was election day, and then after the election, and then after the winter, and then maybe in the spring, and then who knows? I mean, there's always a put off time. These things will never be over if they have their option, because this is just phase one. We will be living in a masked society, in my opinion, permanently, unless we take care of this. That's what they would like to do. It's an instant sign of acquiescence to the whole program, et cetera, et cetera. And, like I said, there's a certain kind of person who loves the virus. Now, I mean, the schools are the safest place for the kids to be. They have a virtually 100% recovery rate as school kids. And they also, and it's 99% for most other people. And they have the rate of the case rate is really low. It's like 1.9% or something like that. It's very, very low.
Yeah.
Citywide right now, there's only the last I looked, this was a few days ago, there's something like 41 people who are actually hospitalized with COVID right now in New York City. That's in 62 hospitals, not even one per hospital.
And you know what that is, Pat? Do you know those hospital numbers? How many, what did you say the numbers are? Let's take those exact numbers that you just said.
Okay, I said there's like 41.
Yeah.
About 41 with actually having COVID. That's after
right. So that's it.
44%.
What you have, though, most of those are, it's a 14-year-old who goes in and he's got Osgood slatters on his knee, and then they run a test on everybody who goes into the hospital. Somebody goes in with they have to get a mole removed, and they're in the hospitals, and they swab them. All of these things, those 40, it could be 38 of them came in for an appendicitis thing, or it could all be unrelated because they're swabbing everybody. And a lot of these young people, they do not have COVID, but they run a positive test on them. So they can say the numbers, and they're absolute. The other day I looked and it said number of, I don't know, it's probably gone up since then because I think the numbers are up, but you can't trust how many people. I always want to say, how many are sick? Because they say the cases are here. And how many are sick? How many are sick? And they say, well, the hospitalization rates are high too. But they've actually changed the way they code these people in the hospitals so that they, for instance, they used to have, if they would call it a COVID hospitalization, if you were staying in the hospital, overnight, in a bed, so you were taking up a hospital bed. But now they have what they call these the temporary stays, where you're just, if you sat on a bed, then that's a COVID hospitalization. So obviously you can't trust the numbers. And when people say that, they say, oh, how dare you, but over and over they show that the numbers are great numbers of cases, very, very low numbers of sickness, and low numbers of death. And the numbers of death are still quite low. Yeah. But that hasn't changed the equation. Obviously, they want to keep the panic going. But like you said, people on the left, your theory is that they love it. They love the disease. But how is it that I see people, Broadway actors, I mean, they're out of work. These are people who were in Broadway shows. And I see them because they're my Facebook friends, and they post and they say, wear your damn mask, and they're screaming at people. And I'm thinking, don't they realize that their industry committed suicide? The Broadway theaters could be open right now. People could be going to see Broadway shows tonight, but they're not. They're closed until next summer. And those same people they would probably, these Broadway producers who've been, they're losing money. The theaters are dying. They're never going to come back. These actors are never going to get their jobs back. They're not going to be able to reconstitute this entertainment industry in New York. And yet they're all part of the program.
Right. It's strange. They're very theatrical people, first of all, and they're programmed to want to appeal to the crowd, the largest number. And in Manhattan, that's the perceived, they're not programmed to take a stand, an actor, they like to appeal to, they want to go over big, and they know what goes over big is wear your damn mask. obviously a more popular message. And I think that they're probably on unemployment. The ones that were working were able to get, a certain amount of money, and it might not be what they're used to, but it's enough to survive. And in the end, they think that's worth it. That's a good trade-off. They see this as the ultimate right and wrong battle rather than, what benefits them personally. They're probably not very up on what's actually going on, because I found that a certain kind of person will look into it, you will, and discover what's going on, what numbers mean this and that. And I don't see a lot of that on the side that is just like so pro-mask. I think that part of the reason they like that point of view is its simplicity. We're talking about a personality type rather than a set of political beliefs. They just are like, this is a very easy thing to plug into. I can see it. It's reasonable. The news is telling me this. I can go that way, and I never have to explain anything. And that's that point of view in general.
Has it, I saw a post yesterday, because I see them almost every day on the different social networks. A post yesterday, someone had gotten COVID. She and her husband got COVID. And she said she and her husband have been so careful. They have, and she went through all the procedures that they do. They haven't seen their parents. They've been doing all the things like, cutting off their family. It's all, like the classic things that, that Chairman Mao, started, family, cutting off your family, the party only. So anyway, she didn't see anybody, lives in New York. She described herself as being 1,000% in compliance with all CDC rules. She and her husband both got COVID, and thankfully they're okay. They're both, had a fever and a few days of misery at home, like you have when you get sick. But then she closed it saying, damn you people who are science deniers, wear your damn mask, and screaming and all this stuff. And I thought, how is that the lesson that you come from it? She's been strapped in a mask. She's voluntarily not seen her family for 7 months. And why is she telling me? Why is she screaming at me and saying I'm a science denier when all of the things that she's done haven't worked? Clearly, she got COVID. On top of the fact that she got COVID when being with 1,000% in compliance, she's okay. She got a flu. So yeah. I would think that would be the time to say, like, oh, there's two things I want to talk to you about. One, COVID isn't as bad as they were telling you. Two, none of the masks work because I've been doing it and we still got COVID. Why didn't she say that? You don't know?
Oh, you dropped out for a second, Tom. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, but I see what you mean. Yeah, why would that not be her takeaway when it's perfectly, to me, it's a rational way to decide things. If you're that type of person, it's always the other guy's fault. It's always these idiots, these ignoramuses who don't follow. Just wear your mask. Why is this so hard? Wear it. And if somebody has some kind of a problem with that and they don't do it, well, they are the problem, So even though you're wearing all your stuff, you are still vulnerable to society at large. We are a community here. They think in terms of community. They think in terms of what's good for society and what keeps us all safe, rather than individual liberty and what's important. Because the lockdown, as you know, has caused so much more domestic abuse and drug abuse and suicide and, joblessness, starvation. It's across the board. Tuberculosis cases have gone in tuberculosis, cancers that have gone out of control. We're only seeing the nip of the ringer on that. Lockdowns are bad, but none of that evidence matters. There's no compassion or empathy for those people as being members of society at large, because they're just not part of this COVID picture for these people.
Yeah, I wonder, because I don't see people on the other side, the team reality that's out there talking about the statistics and talking about citing those things. I don't see someone when they cite all of the terrible things that public policy has wrought over this past year. Almost every single thing that they did, whether it was the shutdowns, closing schools, restricting bars, ruining everyone's life and making everyone lifeless automatons walking about the streets. All of these things have led to such bad things. Why don't I see people posting, calling those people selfish? I don't see that online saying, how dare you, ruin my grandmother's life. There are grandmothers out there they keep talking about the grandmothers, but all of these grandmothers, this might be their last Thanksgiving, and they're the ones saying we can't be with our grandmother. It baffles me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like Cuomo writing a book on how to deal with COVID when he sent sick people into nursing homes and unnecessarily killed thousands of old people.
I hate to laugh at that phrase, but it's so true.
It's so true, and so it is baffling. Here in New York, they have these places that you can eat out on the sidewalk. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen these, but they've made these little structures. And I'm sure that was a considerable expense to these business owners, and I'm sure that it's at a lot of code and a lot of all these things don't make any sense. They're arbitrary, and I think the arbitrary nature of what's happening is part of what we're supposed to be experiencing in order to demoralize us. It's like when you mentioned Chairman Mao and these kind of procedures and stuff. Look, that's what's happening. They want us to be following arbitrary rules that don't help, that don't make any difference, in order to become, like you said, automatons.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm starting to believe that. It does sound like that's what the crazy people used to always say is, that it's all about control. They're trying to control us, but there doesn't seem to be any rational explanation for it, other than because they can see what they've wrought. They've ruined the economy. They've destroyed so much of the country, and at this point, the evidence is in their face that none of it has worked. If you just take shutdowns and masks, at this point, if you don't realize that those things do not work, then you haven't even looked at a chart. And I know Fauci knows it. He's not an idiot. He's just a bad player, But in the end, I do believe that there's only one motivation. There's only one motivation that you could ascribe to this all, and that is they want total control. The Great Reset is a real thing. They're actually doing it. It's terrible. And so with that, I don't know where we go from there, Pat. I guess we say have a nice day.
I suppose so. And I will just add on to what you just said, to paraphrase, Ann Coulter, once you do look at it in that frame, that it's all to break us down and have control, and then everything makes sense. Mm-hmm. All their actions make sense once you see it as what it seems to be.
Well, this is going to make hopefully I'm going to zip over to my site, tom.locals.com, where we're live streaming this. It probably got all of 4 viewers over there, but I'm trying to grow that site, and we have we've created a good little community over there. And so if you want to go over there, have you done any of the local stuff?
Not yet. No.
Okay. If you go over there, you can check it out. I'll send you the link. But we'll see what people are saying over there. Like I said, I put this in one of my Facebook groups, and I'm just trying to grow this thing organically and small. I didn't put it on my main Facebook page because, like I said, half the people are the people that we're talking about. I have thousands of these Facebook friends, and if you so much as question any of this nonsense that's going on, which is right in front of our face, they start screaming, and I don't want to deal with that. So I basically just avoid it.
And
you guys are wonderful.
May I say, though, when you say how come we're not shaming them, for the grandmother stuff and not going to see your grandmother, it's because we're always on our back foot like that, and having to, deny our way out of a hole and prove it with statistics and stuff like that. So, accusing the other side, that would be the next step, but it's hard to make it to that. So I think this kind of stuff that you do with locals and stuff, it's so important for people to connect in this way on more of a grassroots level. Yeah.
And hopefully we will see some, I don't want to, encourage, unrest, but I do want to see the kind of pushback that's happening in some places in Europe. And, it's high time people just stop doing what they're told,
Did you see that clip of Dr. Fauci? He said, it's time to do what you're told.
It's really amazing.
He literally said that. So, maybe someday we'll be as good of Americans as the Germans are.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. NYC Crime Report. And, people who subscribe to the the whole Kumia network. They watch your show, but you also have stuff. People, you have a podcast that people can listen to, right?
I certainly do, on iTunes. Yeah, it's called the New York City Crime Report with Pat Dixon. It's all about New York City crime and, you know, some of this other stuff going on. Also, Too Woke, 2F, which is a lesser known kind of a thing that I'm sort of associated with, but it's
nice.
It's more of a liberal satire. It's the number 2, the word woke, the number 2, and then F.
Oh, that's another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Pat Dixon, I'm glad I'm glad I called on you. I'm gonna go back outside and get some fresh air.
Sounds great. Thanks, Tom. Pleasure
All
being
right.
here.
We'll see you soon.
Later.